Good evening, everyone. This is Srinivaslu Saya. I'm the instructor for the HTML5 CSS-3 JavaScript course for Edureka. So today's webinar is a work day of a web developer. So at the end of this module, you'll be able to understand what is the difference between front-end development and back-end web development. And then we'll look at what a web developer does with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and how he will be doing the alignment and styling of the form elements, table elements, and images. Then we'll see that in a typical day, he or she may have to solve the bugs which are reported on the GUI interface. Before we get into this topic of today's webinar, let's understand what is the importance of web development. So internet, as you know, it's ubiquitous. So you can access the internet through mobile devices, desktops, and see, you might be wondering, why do we need to bother about the internet and the website? Any company requires a website on the internet. The reason being, your users or customers, they need to find you and your business wherever they are. To achieve that, a company or an individual or a professional, they need to have the presence on the internet. So this improves your reputation. You in the sense, you if you are a professional, or your company's the reputation. So note that the website is something which is working as a salesman for you and your company round the clock. Because let's say during the night time also, someone who is living in the other side of the globe, they can find you and they can check what is the services and products that are offered by your company. Therefore, website basically gives a first impression of your business, and so you need to create the website so that it suits the needs of your target audience. When they say need, like why do your users or your customers come to your website? They might be looking for some information. You provide that information what they're looking for. And see, if your website is professionally designed, then that reflects on your expertise and your reputation. So note that since this website is online all the time, 24/7 into 365 days, and note that your customers can find you at any point, at any time of the day, and anywhere on the net, wherever they are, if they are connected to the internet. Note that the website should be such that it should entice the user to take some action. That action is giving business to you. To create a website, you need to have web development skills. Let's look at what a web developer does. Basically, the web developer brings a design of a website to life. When I said to life, so when the website becomes online on the internet, then the customers and users of you or your company, they can find you and your business by connecting to the internet and visiting your website. Note that for converting a website design into a working website on the internet, you need the development skills. So that is the development side of the website. So you might be wondering, who will give you the web design? The web design will be given by the web designer. So once you develop a website, how do you make it accessible to the users? So you need to host it on a web server, so that anyone who types in your company's website or your website, the domain name and the browser, So the browser will go and fetch the website page to the end user and then displays it on his or her the web browser. So to become a web developer, you need to have these skills, development skills. So those skills are HTML, CSS, JavaScript. These are the front-end skills. For doing the back-end development, you need to be familiar with PHP, Perl, Python, Java, and Ruby in any of these languages. Note that a web developer is a logical person. So to give basically he's a the left brain person. So web designer, he's a creative person who creates the design, the look and feel of the web page. So he's a creative person and he's considered as a right brain person. To be a developer, you need to acquire the web development skills, which includes at least it could be a front-end developer, front-end development skills or back-end development skills. If you have both, then you'll be called as a full-stack developer. Let's look at how a normal day of a web developer looks like. So between 9 to 10 a.m. On a working day, the web developer basically walks into the office, logs in, and then probably you'll have in the morning a planning meeting. Basically, like what has to be done for the day. So then if you are following an agile methodology, then there could be a stand-up meeting with your team members and probably your project manager. So here, one of the tasks which might be given to you could be like you can be discussing a requirement or a bug that you need to fix it for the day. Then let's say let's say if it's a new requirement, then probably before 12 o'clock, you would like to have a design from the web designer. So 2 o'clock you'll go for lunch, and at 3 p.m. you come back, and then you start developing the web page by doing the by writing the HTML markup, and probably you will be doing styling with the CSS as well. If required, you may have to do a little bit of JavaScript coding as well. Once you develop this markup, then you quickly test it in a browser, and then you may have to basically integrate with the backend. So integration could be like say clicking on like you have a form where you click on submit form button. So now Ajax call will send to the backend server. The backend server will send a response back to you. You means basically the front end web browser. So that browser takes the response and then displays it. So the full circle should be tested. And so let's say once you completed the development, probably evening in the 5 o'clock, you would like to test whether say if this complete cycle is working fine or not. Note that first when you click on the submit button, so you may have to write some JavaScript code which extract the input which is entered by the user in the forms and then sends it, and what are the success or error message which server sends. So that should be displayed in the web browser. So that testing whole thing is basically considered as a testing and debugging. Note that sometimes the things may not work as you expected. So that is the case. In that case, you need to go and take the help of debugger. So it could be so writing some debug printfs in JavaScript code, or you can go and do a line by line debugging. So that is depends on the person's taste. And once let's say you got it testing, and then you completed the testing, and then you want to make it live. So that is taking what are the development you have done in the day and pushing it to the production is basically called say delivery, or you can call it taking your feature live. So once let's say you made the delivery successfully, and you see that it's the new feature which you did it in the day, it's accessible to the end users. Then probably you pack up and then go home. Let's look at, let's differentiate what are the skills required by a web developer and a web designer. So see left hand side what you see, so that is those are the skills required by a web developer. The right hand side, the one which is has got the black background, so that is those are the skills are required by for a web designer. You can see left hand side there, like Ruby, it's a programming language, AngularJS, it's a JavaScript framework, and of course HTML and CSS, which is very essential for front-end web development, and JavaScript as well. And you may, if you're a full stack developer, then you will have even PHP and Python skills as well. On the right hand side, since so you'll be mainly doing the design or the web pages. Note that the designer will not do the website implementation. He'll just create the look and feel of the web page. So for that you need different set of skills like Adobe Photoshop, Illustrator, and you should be familiar with what is typography, and you should be good at illustration, and there are a few other tools like InDesign, and yeah, so these are the skills which are required by a web designer. Note that 10 years back, if you're just a web developer or a web designer, then still you are considered valuable. Nowadays, a web developer should have some understanding of web design, and web design also should have some understanding of web development skills. So then you'll be considered more valuable, because only if these two roles understand each other's the significance, then there will be smooth communication between these two sides, and that way the development will be without any I think with minimal bugs. So that the reason is the web designer, he clearly communicates his thought process to the web developer. So web developer is the one who actually implements the website. Yeah, let's look at front-end web development. Yeah, in this webinar, we'll be focusing mainly on the front-end web development. We will not be talking anything about back-end web development. Let's look at what front-end web development involves. Basically, you need to define different components of a web page using HTML markup elements. They are also called HTML tags. So then you may have to use CSS declarations or CSS rules to look those HTML components or HTML elements look pleasing to the end users. So just having the CSS and HTML is not good enough. So you need to, like say for example, you have a login form. So when a user clicks on the sign in button, then the login username and the password, which is entered by the user, that has to be extracted and sent it to the backend web server. To do that, you need the JavaScript. Basically, JavaScript provides the interactivity on the web page. And finally, note that if you start doing the coding in HTML, CSS, JavaScript, sometimes it might take longer time. So that is when web developers basically take the help of frameworks. So they'll use a framework. So some expert web developer would have developed the regular tasks which are required by a web developer, and those tasks are activities or any styling or coding. So someone would have done it. You just understand how to use them, and then use it directly in your code, and then start working quickly. So that way you will save the time by not having to write the code from the scratch. That's where the framework will help to improve your productivity. Let's briefly talk about backend web development. So though we'll not be talking much in the later part of the slides. So basically the backend development is required for generating the HTML, basically the web page dynamically. Note that when a web page is dynamically generated on the fly by the web server, generally CSS and JavaScript more or less remain same from page to page. Whereas when HTML, the content will change from one usage to another usage. And for doing the backend development, you need the skills, as I said, Java. If you're doing the website development, backend development using Java, then you need a application container like Apache Tomcat or IBM WebSphere. If you're running Node.js, then you need JavaScript. If you're running like Apache Web Server, then you can do coding in PHP, Perl, or Python, or even Ruby. Note that the main aim of the your backend development is to serve the web page as fast as possible to the end users. And your web server should be able to support as many users as it can. So the more number of users one web server can support, the better. Let's look at what are the roles played by HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. The HTML, I mean, you can compare it to the skeleton of a human body. Note that skeleton defines the structure of the human body. Similarly, the HTML basically defines the different elements and how, say, what comes, how they are connected, and so on. Basically, the whole structure is defined in HTML using HTML tags. Next comes, I mean, if you just have skeleton, that's not good enough. You need to have, I mean, the muscles on top of these bones and skeleton, because muscles are the one which actually makes the limbs move. So similarly, JavaScript also provides the dynamism, the things moving. Like for example, any message, say if you click on a button, you want some extra information should be shown. Or if you click on another button, so probably that extra information that was shown should be hidden. Okay, like this dynamism, if you want, then that is done using JavaScript programming language. And note that if you just have muscles, that's not good enough. Of course, after the muscles, you need to, so there's a skin covering all these muscles, but that's not good enough. You need to present yourself in a pleasing manner. So that presentation and styling is on a human body is like having a nice dress, suit, and shoes, and then tie, and well cropped hair. So that's what will present you to the other people. Similarly, if you just have the HTML elements, that's not good enough. You need to style them so that it is visually pleasing to the end users. So that role is played by CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. So since we've been talking about HTML, which is hypertext markup language, let's briefly look at what hypertext means. Basically, hypertext is a text which has got references. Our references are called hyperlinks to the other text. So in Greek, hyper means over and beyond. So this is over and beyond the normal text is what is hypertext. This is the idea of hypertext first suggested by a person by name Vannevar Bush, and his picture is the right hand side. Note that this hypertext, the idea was almost like it was more than 50 years ago. No, not even 50. I think 55, let's see, 60 years ago, more than 60 years ago. Yeah, let's look at, see, once you have developed the web page, different web pages of a website, then you need to host it on a web server. Note that, like for example, if you go and type in the browser www.google.com, then what is see Google knows that since you haven't given any page HTML page, then by default it serves you a default page which is index.html or it could be index.php. Once the see for serving this web default web page and even other web pages, you need to basically host or save all these web pages on a server. So that server is called a web server. Generally, these web servers will be listening on TCP IP port number 80. So 80 is the default HTTP port number on which the HTTP server will be listening for the incoming connections. So your HTTP web server could be, say it could be HTTPD, which is a daemon process, HTTP daemon process, or Apache 2, or Nginx, or iNet Manager if you are using a Microsoft server. Then iNet Manager, basically it is a Internet Information Server. Or I mean, you might be running your web server need not be just a HTTP web server. It could be web application server as well. So in that case, I mean, what are the Java application which you have written? So that you'll be running on a Apache Tomcat, which is the open source server, or licensed server, WebSphere, which is from IBM. Note that for all this front for web development, you need HTML, CSS, JavaScript skills, and your browser and the backend server, they'll be communicating using HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol, and the HTTP will be transmitted over TCP/IP protocols. So your backend server or your front end, the machine on which you are running the web browser, it could be any one of these the operating systems, popular operating system, like it could be Linux machine or Windows machine or Mac OS. Okay, let me do a quick time check. It's 9:54. Let me see if there are any questions in the questions window. Ashwin says, how much powerful are CMS platforms? Okay, so let me take these questions a little later. Which server is the best and safer? Yeah, Rohit asked a question, which server is the best and safer? Yeah, that's I would say it goes by your personal choice, personal preference. So let me give a brief the guidelines which will determine which server to use. Let me go back to that slide. Yeah, this is see, generally you have two choices. Rarely, I mean, a web server will be running on a Macintosh machine, but generally it is one of these two. Either it's an open source a server like HTTP web server, which is also from an Apache, or it could be Apache Tomcat, or it could be a licensed software from Microsoft. It could be like, say, your Internet IIS server, Internet Information Server, or if you, yeah, these are the mainly, I would say, two. So there could be even other servers, like for example, it could be Nginx as well, which is also the freeware. So very rarely, like people use Nginx. Predominantly, it is either Microsoft servers or the HTTP Apache web servers. Okay. Yeah. So now the question comes in, which is better? Say, I would say generally all the enterprises like could be like banks or insurance companies or big companies like IBM, IBM, Cisco, all these like these big companies. Since these are the enterprise customers, they would like to have a long-term support for what are the servers they are using. So obviously, a company like Microsoft, which provides a long-term support to their enterprise customers, so they generally go with Microsoft servers. that doesn't mean that, okay, yes, I mean, in those companies, I mean, they may choose. Like note that whenever I said Microsoft servers, for all enterprise critical applications, for their internal billing or internal accounting, order processing, for all those things, I mean, they will be using Microsoft servers, because they need a long-term support and commitment by the big companies like Microsoft. Let's say if there's any non-critical functions where it's just like probably a website, even if it is down for a few minutes, it's okay, fine, it's acceptable. Any such non-critical applications, then these enterprise customers can go for the open source software like Apache HTTP web servers, or it could be like Apache Tomcat as well. So, but even within these companies, some teams may use even Tomcat, depending on their conference level with these open source servers. So they may use this for the for critical applications as well. But only thing is, note that there will be no one who will be providing the support. Then they may have to get the support, buy the support from companies like Red Hat and other private parties for these open source servers. Hope that answers your question. Let me go to the next slide. Yeah. Yeah. Generally, a web page or web document, or you can call it HTML page, HTML document. Basically, it's an interface. It's a user interface for the web. All the users on the internet. So if they need to see web content, then this HTML web page is the what is being displayed to the end users. Note that HTML page is a plain text and it's human readable, and this HTML page or HTML document is transmitted on transmitted on top of HTTP protocol. So note that when your whole HTML page goes as the message body of this HTTP message. Your HTML page could be of two types. Let's say if your web page content is not changing, then so that's called a static web page. Static web page are ready-made web pages. Means once you create it, and every user will be served with the same page. So generally these pages will have extension .html or .htm. So nowadays the HTML is not being used, because in, let's say, 10-15 years back, in the early days of web, when Microsoft machines were supporting only 3 characters in the extension, so then .html was used. But nowadays even Microsoft machines support more than 3 extensions, 3 characters in the extensions, file extension. So generally .html is the convention. So another type of page is like a dynamic. It's called a dynamic web page. So the dynamic web page is basically dynamically generated by the server on the fly. Means every user will get a different HTML page. As I said, your CSS and the JavaScript of the page more or less remains the same for user to user. And note that this dynamic page, generating the dynamic page takes some finite amount of time on the server. It needs some computing cycles on the server side. So when you have a dynamic content, then you basically you have to do the scripting on using languages like PHP, JSP, or ASP. Or if you're running on a Node.js, then it could be say JavaScript as well. So generally these will have the appropriate file extension like .js, .php, and so on. So note that whatever the backend scripting language you use, the goal of this scripts is to generate output which is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Because that these are only 3 things which is understood or rendered by the browser, web browser. Yeah, let's look at a brief brief introduction to the CSS. The CSS, as I said, it is a cascading style sheet. Basically, it describes the look and formatting of the page. So you can apply this CSS style sheets on any of this markup languages like HTML, HTML. XHTML stands for XML, HTML. So an XML, which is an extended markup language, and SVG, which is scalable vector graphics. Note that the main purpose of CSS is to separate the content which is defined in HTML from its presentation. All the presentation, that is the styling, the look and feel, all is basically specified in the CSS file. In the CSS, basically you have what is called attributes or properties. So those properties could be like layout properties or font related properties, color, background, border, margin, lists, tables. So each of these different elements of the HTML page will have different properties. So those properties you can specify how you want these elements to be displayed. Like for example, if you want a background color of yellow, then you say background color : yellow. So that's how you get the background color yellow. So a little later, probably I'll give a quick demo of what is CSS. Yeah, the CSS basically has got what is called CSS rules. In a CSS rule or CSS declaration, you have what is called a selector and a declaration block. The selector is basically the uniquely identifies or selects the HTML element in the HTML element which is present in the HTML file. So this selector could be like a tag name like h1p or label, or it could be a value of a ID or class attribute, or it could be like how this element is related to the other elements. Like for example, it could be parent-child relationship, or it could be sibling relationship. So you can say that, okay, select all the siblings of a particular element. So all these are called the selectors. So there are even other advanced selectors in CSS as well. The CSS basically declaration block will be enclosed inside a curly brace, start curly brace and end curly brace. Inside this curly braces, you will have what is called property and value pairs. The property is a name which is predefined by the CSS, and the values you can just specify what are the values you want. Like one property could be like, for example, font size. It's a property, and value is, let's say you want 20 pixels font size. Then 20px is the value what you specify. Note that these property names are unique, and only some property names make sense on some elements. Not all properties are applicable for all the elements. So depending upon what elements you want to style, and you have to use the corresponding property which is applicable to that element. If you use a wrong property and a wrong element, then the CSS engine it just keeps silent, and then what are the best it could do? Generally, it uses the default styling and it renders it, and your style will not be applied on that element. Let's look at JavaScript. JavaScript actually initially started as a Mocha. Later it renamed as a LiveScript. Initially it was developed by Netscape. Basically a precursor to today's Mozilla Foundation is what is the Netscape. So the current version of JavaScript is based on ECMAScript 5.1. ECMA stands for European Computer Manufacturers Association. They define the standard for the JavaScript. So the next version 6.0 will come sometime mid of this year, sometime next few months. So later when the LiveScript got renamed as a JavaScript. At that time, Java was getting a lot of popularity in the web community. So probably to get advantage of that marketing popularity, so LiveScript got renamed to JavaScript. Note that the JavaScript what you use has nothing to do with Java language. Both are completely different. JavaScript is a front-end web development language, whereas Java, it could be like you can develop any applications which can be run independently outside the web server, or you can run it on a web server inside a Apache Tomcat. One main difference is, like say, Java is a statically typed language and JavaScript is a dynamically typed language. So when I say dynamically typed, you don't have to define the variables, like what type of the value it stores. So one variable, let's say XYZ, you can store integer, you can store a string, or you can store an object in it, or you can store an array also. The same XYZ will can contain any of these, the valid data types of the JavaScript language. That's what I mean, the dynamically typed language. Note that to execute the JavaScript, you need what is called a JavaScript engine. Some of the JavaScript engine, like for example, Chrome has got the V8 JavaScript engine, and similar JavaScript engine on Mozilla is called SpiderMonkey. So using JavaScript, note that JavaScript runs only inside the web browser. So of course later, the V8 engine, they separate it out and then put it on the server. That is what is called a Node.js. So you cannot do a few things using JavaScript, like for example, reading and writing of the files on the client machine. Similarly, writing to a file on the server machine, and you cannot have closed window which is opened by some other website, and you cannot read like for example, one page cannot read content from another page of another company. So these are not allowed deliberately because of the security reasons. And the same ECMAScript standard has been implemented by Microsoft, and that is called JScript. Yeah, so let's look at DOM, document object model. So basically this document object model is the in-memory representation or the data structure in which the whole web page, what you see on the web browser, gets represented, and your web browser basically manipulates these DOM elements. That's how you get the dynamism on the web page. So using for dynamically changing the content in the DOM, you need to use the JavaScript language. So using JavaScript, you can manipulate the DOM. So manipulation could be like, say, you can change an HTML element, or you can change an attribute, you can change the style, you can add element, delete element, or you can associate an event. So all these things you can do using JavaScript. Yeah, let's look at let me do a quick time check. Yeah, it's 10:10. Yeah, let's look at what are the activities in developing a web page. Probably these are the activities which a normal web developer could be doing in a normal working day. Like for example, assume that the web developer is developing a web page. Say, so the web page has got a web form, a table, and an image. So then he would like, once the markup is once he writes the markup in HTML file, then in the CSS he may have to align the input fields, center the form elements, the highlight when the input field is in focus, or for a table. So yeah, he or she may get the requirement that okay, the header and footer should stay at fixed position, whereas the content in the table should be scrollable, and even the content should be center aligned. That the table should be center aligned. Like say if it is an image, then he might have got a bug saying that okay, the image got stretched horizontally. You need to maintain the aspect ratio, and then probably he may have to align the image in the center along the horizontal direction, also center vertically, and so on. Yeah. So note that see in a typical web development, see once you know say what the content should go into the page, so you can quickly write the HTML markup. Then you will be spending more time in basically styling them using CSS, or also writing the code in JavaScript to get the dynamic behavior on the page. I would say HTML, this is just approximate. Like for example, writing the HTML markup should take not more than 10-15% of the time, and the remaining, I would say 80 to 90% of the time you'll be doing I would say again 30-40% in styling using CSS, are remaining 40-50% writing the JavaScript code. So that is the approximate distribution of a say to get a to develop a web page which involves all three. Yeah, let's see that say once you developed and then you written the HTML markup, CSS styling, and then JavaScript code. So then once you start rendering it on the web browser, then you'll find the bugs. Basically, people, software engineers, they say okay, yes, my code has a bug. So what does a bug means? So bug means basically it is the bugs are normal part of any software development, because no software developer in the world will not be able to write a bug-free code at the first instance itself. So normally it has to go through the multiple, write the code, test it and debug it, and then correct it, and then again debug it and implement it, probably fixing the code, and then again you go through the same cycle again and again. At least it will take minimum 2 cycles, maximum it can take even 10-15 cycles as well if the bug is very tricky. So rather than hating the bugs, software developers should start loving the bugs, because ultimately it's your code and you need to fix the problems in your code, right? So what is defined as a bug? See, any behavior of the software, it could be your web page or your what are the code which you have written using any other programming language like C++, Java, or Python. So irrespective of what are the language which you use to implement that the software. So anything, any behavior or even look and feel that does not match with the end user's expectation, then it's called a bug. That is a very generic definition of a bug. So root cause, what could be a root cause of a software bug? See, there could be many root causes, but these are generally that the main the root causes of a software bug. So the requirement could be completely missing because it is implicit requirement. It's understood that okay, yes, that should have been there. No one would ever specify that explicitly that this should be there. Or whoever is that person who captured the requirement, he would have misunderstood what the end user wants or what the customer or the client wants. So since his understanding was incorrect, so he would have specified it incorrectly. That could be another source of the bug. Finally, assume that the requirements are all captured correctly. When that requirement got translated to the code, got implemented, at that time the software developer or programmer would have done a mistake. but unfortunately it could not be discovered by the testing team. So note that initially you as a developer, you do the unit testing, and after that you will do a little bit of integration testing, and you give it to the QA team or testing team for the final testing, system testing. At that time, so unfortunately, even the QA team could not discover it. Finally, it went to the end user, or it went to the acceptance testing. At that time, the end users or even the client would discuss some other bugs. When I said bug, so it did not meet the users, clients or the customer's expectation. So then once it is reported, again you have to basically go back and then fix the code and test it again, ship it again. So note that you need to find the bugs or catch them early so that you can fix them early. So the further it goes from the requirements phase in the development cycle, then the costlier the bug to fix it. For example, if you ship the software to the end users, but the end users find the bug, then probably you have to release the hotfix and make sure that all the users get it, if it is a security hotfix. And doing this will basically takes a lot of development effort and coordination and program management. So this could be very expensive because it consumes the company's resources. So any bug which is reported by the end users or customers, so basically it damages the company's reputation or your product's reputation. So that reputation could be like, say, the damage could be like, say, you may lose the customer, okay, and through word of mouth it may spread to even other users or other customers. So that way your future potential revenue also is damaged because of your bugs, a poor quality software code. And yeah, hence the main goal of all the developers should be like, say, to make sure that the code works as user expects, and so that there are a minimum number of bugs which are discovered by the end users or customers. So let's look at a specific case of what could be a source of bugs in a web development. The source of bug could be like, for example, HTML bugs. So these are easy to catch and easy to fix. It could be like, say, probably the web developer used an incorrect markup element, or he or she used incorrect attribute on an element. Like, for example, there is something called an autofocus, required attribute, which can be specified only the input. But if you specify that on some other say input element, if you specify that on some other element, like for example paragraph element, so it may not work. So you need to use the right attributes at on the right elements. Probably you would have placed the HTML element in a wrong place. So probably it might be expecting in a probably nesting order, some particular nesting order, but it's not there in that nesting order. So that could be a bug. So there could be other bugs in CSS as well. So these are also easy to catch, but sometimes may be difficult to fix it, because they're easy to catch because you can see that visually on the web browser that it is not as you expect. It could be because of improper incorrect attribute values, or it could be like, say, you haven't given the correct selector for the CSS rule. If you don't give a correct selector, then the style will not get applied. And let's say if you give incorrect values, then let's say, for example, in a scrollable content, then when you scroll it to the top or the bottom, then some of the content will be overlapping with the footer or header. So depending upon where you are. So then that is also not expected. Obviously, user would like to see the content fully. So that is also could be because of improper value on the CSS attribute. And the last one, but not the least, could be like JavaScript bugs. So these sometimes could be difficult to catch unless you hit that sequence. But the once you discover those bugs, and sometimes they could be even difficult to fix them as well. Like one of the some of the easy things in the JavaScript bugs could be like, say, once the user has entered, probably you are not doing proper validation. So on one particular field, you are not doing the validation correctly. So that could be one JavaScript bug. Or let's say when you click on the button, so the form is not properly getting saved on the backend server because you didn't compose the key value pairs that should go into the form properly, or so you are not making a Ajax call with the right URL, or it could be a bug could be because of many reasons. Or probably when you are making the Ajax call, you are not passing the right argument to the JavaScript API call. So these could be some of the bugs in the JavaScript code. Note that bugs could be there on the backend server as well, because even backend server dynamically generating the web page, then since that code is written Python, Perl, or PHP, there could be some bugs as well. Because of that, the HTML or CSS content, what you get it on the front end side, could not be rendered correctly, or there could be some misalignment and so on. So the backend server, on the backend side, even error could be like, say, you are making some API call in PHP, but that's not actually saving the form data to the backend web server, or sorry, not web server, backend database like MySQL. So bugs can be there anywhere, right from HTML, CSS, JavaScript, even backend scripts as well. Right. So whenever you have these bugs, you need to take the help of debuggers, or in case of web development, you need to use the debug tools. In Chrome, you have what is called developer tools. In Mozilla Firefox, you have what is called Firebug. So using these debug tools, basically these debug tools will help you to see the nesting out of HTML elements and what are the CSS rules that are getting applied on the particular HTML element, and whether some property of CSS is getting overridden by another property which is declared later in the file. So all these things you can see it in the developer tools or Firebug. Let's say if any JavaScript bugs, you can do source level debugging. You can basically step through line by line and see, and then you can put watch expressions on a particular variable and then see how the value is changing. So you can put the breakpoints so that once you run it means once you reload the page, then when that part of the JavaScript code is hit, then the browser will stop there and you can do step-by-step execution. And you can inspect what is the DOM element, DOM node corresponding to HTML element inside this developer tools or Firebug. And sometimes you can use even console for reporting any runtime errors. There are even like other tabs where you can check the network activity, and you can do source level profile on the JavaScript as well. So that completes today's webinar. Let me just quickly demonstrate some of the concepts. Yeah. So here I have a scrollable table. So I'm just taking the full path of it. I think, yeah, I have it here. So this is a page, so I refresh it. Here is the table. So wherein you can see the header and footer of this table are constant. They're fixed. And whereas the table body is scrollable. So normally for doing this, people take the help of frameworks like jQuery. But here I have done using I have not used any jQuery or JavaScript at all. It's a pure CSS. So here, let me show the code. This is the code. You can see this is a HTML. This is the root of the element, and I have styled this table using CSS only. And here is the markup for the table. So this is the header of the heading row, and this is the body. And I have a lot of rows, and then this is the footer of the body. Note that here I don't have any JavaScript at all. It's a pure CSS. Since there's no JavaScript code to get this scrollable table, obviously this is much faster and efficient compared to if you had used JavaScript to achieve the same effect. Okay, though I love to demonstrate even other things which I talked about in today's webinar, but due to lack of time, so I'm not able to demonstrate. But there we have just 2 more minutes to take questions. Yeah, if you have more questions, please type in your questions window. I'll try answering them. If time permits, at the end, if any of you are interested, I'll give a few more demo of like what you can do with CSS and JavaScript. So let me just open my questions window and then see if there are any questions. Yeah, let me take the questions on my own. Yeah, just give me a minute. I'll have a glass of water. Feeling thirsty. Yeah, so coming back to the questions. So Rohit asked a question saying that, okay, which server is the best and safer? As I said, nowadays even open source servers like Apache, HTTP Apache web servers, that's also secure, reasonably secure for any practical purposes. But still, as I said, big enterprises, so they go with like Microsoft servers because it is trustworthy. See, open source, anyone could have written the code. You don't know who's the author. You cannot take anyone, so you cannot catch anyone for any bugs in the open source code. Whereas if you are using, let's say, servers from Microsoft, so then you can always go back and take the technical contact technical support and get the help from Microsoft. Therefore, all enterprises, big enterprises, they go with the servers from reputed companies like Microsoft. Let me just go and look at it. Yeah, Ashwin asked a question like, how much powerful are CMS platforms when compared to development using programming languages? Yeah, Ashwin, see the CMS, these content management systems, basically someone has done the most of the coding for you. Like for example, WordPress. So WordPress can be used by even non-technical people as well. So if you know a few basics, then you can get the website, simple website up and running on a WordPress. So let's say there's a little more. So like for example, Drupal. After WordPress, there is another framework called Joomla. So Joomla, it is easy to configure, but you need to do some programming to get website up and running. So next comes Drupal, which is more flexible because you can do you have a lot of flexibility. You have to do a lot of coding to get a website up on a Drupal. So it depends on the end user who wants his or her website to be developed. So it depends on the technical skill of that person. So if a non-technical person will be comfortable using WordPress, a technical person who wants a lot of flexibility and freedom in implementing the that website, in developing website, so that person might choose Drupal. Okay. So note that see, irrespective of what are the CMS you use, you cannot get as much freedom as if you are developed that website from scratch using these web technology like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You have complete freedom, and you can get any site, and with like almost like 99% freedom is there, except that okay, you need to use the same tag names and the same attribute names, and of course, the JavaScript language, what are the constraints it provides. So that is the only limitation. Like you need to use what are the facilities you are provided by these HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and with that you can develop any website. Yeah, Srinu asked a question saying like, please email me the PPT. Yeah, Srinu, please contact Edureka support because they are the ones who can send you the PPT. Okay. And let me look at the other questions. So Jatin asked question, if started as a beginner, which is desirable to select a developer or designer or mere seller? So it depends, like for example, it all depends like what you enjoy doing it. Note that say either you are a web designer or web developer. So whatever the career path you have chosen, so you are going to do almost more or less the rest of your life. And since you're doing day in, day out, you should be basically whatever you do, either designing or development, you should love what you do. Because ultimately, see, note that in your career, so what you do every day for living is you should be enjoying, in addition to the basically earning your salary. So I think to answer that question, it depends on the person. If you are a creative person, then you have to be a designer. If you are a logical person, then you have to be a developer. Hope Jatin that answers your question. So Satyendra asked a question like a difference between HTTP web server and web application server. See, HTTP web server generally listens on one port. It could be port 80 or 8080. Whereas if it is a web application server, it can listen on multiple ports simultaneously. That's one difference. Second is, generally the what do you call a web server? It will be like say developed using backend scripting language like PHP, Perl, Python, and then output of it is like again HTML, CSS, JavaScript, which is sent to the front end. Yeah, if it is a static page, then it just serves the static HTML, CSS, and JavaScript content. But if it's a web application server, and then for the backend development, you would have used a language like Java. So to the best of my knowledge, I think Java is the most popular language for the backend development if you are running in a Apache Tomcat or WebSphere. So since you have the full power of Java language at your disposal, then you can develop very complicated applications as well. So if your application is very complex, which requires a lot of logic and a lot of database interactions, and then you may choose to use Java as a language and run that Java application in a Apache Tomcat or WebSphere. So yeah, If it is not that complex, you don't need that much flexibility. Um, then you may go for PHP, Python, Perl, and JavaScript. Note that if you are using these, what do you call them? Yeah, whether you use any of these languages, either you use scripting languages or Java. So the output produced by these two is HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Okay, and another thing is web application server, since it needs it needs to execute your Java programs. It tends to be slower compared to your Apache HTTP web servers. So that is another difference. These are a few differences between web application server and simple HTTP web server. It all depends, like what is the web application you are going to implement it. So that decides your choice of the server, as application server or simple HTTP server. Okay, and one example I can give is, like, for example, Cisco has developed a contact center solution, which is a SIP. It is Session Initiation Protocol. So using SIP protocol, so they developed a complete web application which runs on top of which uses SIP stack, and then it manages the incoming calls, and it routes it to the appropriate technical support agent who can answer that call. So taking the call and then say connecting to the right agent, this whole thing is implemented as a web application, which is implemented in Java and then runs on a Apache Tomcat. Note that if you have to develop the same application using any of these languages like PHP or JavaScript, it would have taken a longer time, and sometimes it may not be possible to develop using those scripting languages. Then Java is the only option you have. And another thing is developing a Java application, so will take a longer time, whereas they are doing this website development using scripting language is much faster. Okay, these are some pros and cons. It all depends, like what application you are developing, and then appropriately choose the either application server or web server. Hope that answers the question. Is Apache fair enough to create and launch a website live? I didn't understand your question. You mean to say, is Apache HTTP web server is good enough to create and launch a website? If that is the answer, so that is the question, Krishna, yes, answer is yes. Simple HTTP web servers is sufficient to develop and launch a website live. So note that it depends whether your site is a static site or a dynamic site. If it is a dynamic site which you can script it using any of the scripting languages, then yes, then you can just use HTTP simple web server. But if some of the things cannot be done using these scripting languages, then you have no option but to develop in Java. And then Srinu asked the question, I am very new to HTML, CSS and JavaScript. How many days does it take to learn these skills for a Java developer? So since you are already from the programming background, so I think it will be much faster, quicker for you. But the only thing is, see, HTML is quick to learn, but CSS, to really master it, you need to put a little effort. You need to do a lot of reading, experimentation. JavaScript, since it's like any other programming language, you can quickly learn. Of all these three, I would say the CSS is a little tough to get it. Like, for example, the scrollable table. if you can do it in JavaScript as well, but if you want to achieve using CSS only, then it's a little tough. Yeah, Alvin asked question like, what is the aspect ratio? Aspect ratio is just like ratio between the width and height. Like for example, all our in olden days, the TVs used to come in the aspect ratio 4:3. That's the default aspect ratio. But nowadays you get TV screens, like for example, your LED or LCD screens, which are wide. So even nowadays we have the laptops also, which are coming with the wider screen. These wider screens are 16 width and 9 height. So note that that is the ratio. So depending upon whether you have smaller, either 14-inch, 15-inch, or 21-inch, so the number of pixels in the horizontal direction and vertical directions, it may vary. But the ratio between width and height remains same, either 4:3 or 16:9. So for images, whenever the image is taken using a photograph or whatever it is, created map, basically the width and height ratio should remain same, whether you scale down or scale up. So if you don't maintain this aspect ratio same, then see the image is being stretched in a horizontal direction or vertical direction. Okay, next question. Sir, is there any demo for sample website design from scratch? Ajay, yeah, see this today's webinar is just like for 1 hour. I think 1 hour is too short time to develop a web page from the scratch. It needs at least 10 to 15 minutes, and we're already overshot by 15 minutes. So in this webinar, I'll not be able to demonstrate, but in the course, generally what are the concepts which I teach, I demonstrate, I write the code in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and I demonstrate it in the web browser. And let me just, yeah, Srinu said that I'm happy to know that I can hear, I can hear I few vegan. Yeah, Srinu, your question is not clear. Can you rephrase it? Then is Kilan said, give me the more demos. I'm interested. Please share the demos. Velan also said the same thing. Yeah, let me see if I can give a few more demos at the end of after I answered all the questions. Srinu said, can you please tell me the approaches, add procedure for learning these day by day planning. Okay. Yeah, see, the first thing you should learn is HTML, and once you see, if you just keep learning HTML, it might be boring. So you have to do a little bit of styling of the elements what you created in what you defined in HTML. Once you know how to do the styling, then you have to do some JavaScript coding to get some dynamism on the page. I think, see, this learning the web development is a continuous process. So I think because things keep changing every day, you have to keep learning the new things which as and when they come. So I think it'll take a really long time. See, if you just the basics, you can learn within a month if you follow a strict regime of, let's say, spending about I would say 5 to 8 hours in a day. You can learn all these things reasonably well within a month's time. But if you're spending anything less than that, then accordingly it gets extended. Note that the learning never stops, and by the time you learned and you use it on a project, some few other new things would have come. So you need to learn them as well. Krishna asked a question. I want a selected tab to zoom in whenever I hover it. I would like to create a website, fantastic user interface. While styling should I use a styling? Should I use achieve that? Yes, Krishna. Yeah, to answer your question, yeah, it is possible to do that. Basically what are the selected tab? You can zoom it. For that, you need to use what is called colon hover, which is a pseudo class, and then you need to do the styling on that element whichever you want to zoom it. So that's possible. You can do it purely in CSS, and you can write some little bit of JavaScript code to do that. Let's, for example, if you click on something, so at that time you want it. So it depends on, like, say, the CSS only solution, or even JavaScript solution is also possible for that. So do you think just CSS would do? Yeah, Krishna, you just CSS also you can do it. So please share some web portals which provide backend web development for remote developers, such as freelancers and such. Yeah, actually there's a lot of material on the web. You can search for, so when you said backend web development, it involves many things. For example, you need to know how to configure HTTP web server, Apache web server. You need to know about configuration. So when I said configuration, like, say, how to configure for the website, how to define basically the main thing, like how to enable the PHP module. And the next thing is like, if you are like, there is something called an Apache redirect rules, you need to know them as well. The backend web databases. So for that, you need to be familiar with your ODBC or JDBC. What are the yeah, tools available to connect to the backend databases? So that whole thing comprises the backend web development. So to summarize, you need to know configuration about Apache web server. You need to know, or if it is a Tomcat, you need to know Tomcat configuration as well. And then the scripting languages are and then the backend databases. So that completes the complete. And of course, but not the least, note that any backend development you do, the output of these is HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So if you know HTML, CSS, JavaScript, then it is a added advantage. And note that backend development you can do using even JSP as well. So Java server pages. Yeah. So Himanshu asked a question, what is the difference between JavaScript, JNode, JScript? JScript, I said it is a JavaScript implementation from Microsoft. JSS. So let me get back to you, Himanshu. I think at least I haven't heard of JNode and JScript. Sorry, no, JSS. There is JSF, which is Java server pages, Java server faces. JSP is Java server pages, but I haven't heard of JSS. So let me get back to you. Let me make a note of it. Just a minute. Oh. So I think I got it correctly. So what is the JSS and just a minute. Yeah, JNode and JSS, right? JNode and JSS. Okay. Yeah, I'll send you by email. And let me see if there are any other questions. I think, yeah. Fine. And Srinivas asked a question, explain about Node.js and SpiderMonkey. So as I said, Srinivas, see Node.js is basically has got a V8, which is the Google's implementation of a JavaScript engine. It's called V8, number 8. So similarly, SpiderMonkey is a JavaScript implementation on Mozilla Firefox. Okay, so within these V8 engine or SpiderMonkey, your JavaScript code gets executed, and then it interacts with the other elements, like say it could be like DOM nodes, or it could be like say network, and so on. So yeah, explain see about Node.js and the SpiderMonkey. It's I think beyond the scope of this webinar. I would suggest probably if you search Node.js on Google, and the Wikipedia entry on Node.js should give a good information about what Node.js is about. So Srinivas said, I'm happy to know that I can learn in few weeks. Yeah, okay, yeah, definitely. As I said, no, it all depends like how much effort you put in. In my opinion, as I said, in a month's time, if you spend anywhere between 2 to 10 hours, you can learn good amount of web development, which you can apply anywhere professional career. So Yadaya asked, could you please arrange a demo on Ajax calls, JavaScript and jQuery? Probably, this is a query for Edureka. Probably Edureka, probably in future demos, so I can include some demo that includes Ajax calls. So let me see one example. Let me see if Yada is still there. Yeah, Yada is still there. Okay, let me check Yada. Yeah. If time permits, I'll just give a demo of Ajax call a little later. So one example, Satish asked a question like one example might have been better each of the HTML, JavaScript, and CSS hosting. Yeah, Satish, even I would like to say demonstrate the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, but unfortunately because of time, so I could not demonstrate all the things. But let me do a quick demo of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay, yeah, let me demonstrate some JavaScript code. For that, I need to go to my classes. Here I have a demo. Yeah, let me just demonstrate something where I can demonstrate JavaScript as well. Yeah. So here is a HTML code. Let me check. Just give me a minute. I'll be back. I'm back. Yeah. So let me render this page. Can you hear me? Yeah. Let me open the JavaScript page as well. So here inside this, I need module 8. Yeah. So yeah, here is a button, Ajax request button. So I'm clicking on this and then waiting. I think it should work because when I use the same HTML code whenever I give the demo in the class. Okay, if it is not working, okay. I think I modified something which is okay. I don't have code here. Well, let me show you. See here, there's a this is a button. Whenever I click on the button, send Ajax request is called. So let me search if that code exists. Yeah, so note that that exists, but that's commented out. So let me just uncomment that code. So now I commented this code. So this is the code where I'm making a Ajax call. Let me refresh it now and click on it. So in 5 seconds, you should get a response from the server. Okay, I think something. Yeah. Okay, yeah. There's another thing is here I should modulate. I'm including it. Modulate callback function. Yeah, let me see what is the problem. You can go to debug tools, developer tools. I can go to console and then see there is a syntax error. Okay, something is wrong here. Somewhere unexpected token W. Okay, I think there's some extra code which should not have been there. Let me see where that code is. It's not the one. Sometimes these errors are quite tricky. I think see there's some extra things, some things. Let me comment out this code as well. Because when I'm in the session, when I'm giving the demo, I keep modifying the code. I think I'm not able to catch. I think everything seems to be fine. I don't know, something is wrong somewhere. I think, yeah. So let me just demonstrate some other JavaScript code. React. So let me demonstrate some code. Yeah. Yeah. So here is basically an HTML page in which here, for example, you can select this item 2 and you can move up or you can move down. And you can select one item and you can delete that entry. So you can, so let's say below 1 dot, like for example, below 2.4, you want to add below this. You can add an item. So you can see new item 1. You can add above the item. So you select 2.2 and you say add above. So let's say you want to decrease the indentation level, you can decrease it like this. If you want to increase it, you can increase it. So note that whenever I click on these buttons, so I'm basically calling some JavaScript code. So that JavaScript code is here. Yeah. So the JavaScript code, what you've seen, so what is working in the previous demo is this. This is JavaScript code. Okay. And let me see. Yeah. I think, yeah, I think it's almost 11 o'clock now. We were overshot by half an hour. The scheduled time for this webinar is only 1 hour. So let me see if there are any more questions. Okay. Yeah, there are no more questions. Thank you very much for joining this webinar. So if you don't have any more questions, I'll end this webinar now. Thank you. Bye-bye.